Welcome to the ISB podcast. I'm your host, Sahil, here with Rahi. A little bit of a different face for the U.S. women's national team. Of course, our correspondent, Ishana, will be here for the Olympics, but we decided to give Rahi a chance to talk about what he really wanted to talk about, which was the U.S. women's national team Pre-Olympic Friendlies.
I'm just happy for the opportunity. I know the starting lineup. I'm not the starter here. Ashana will be back for the big games when they really matter. I'm just here filling in. So apologies to everyone out there. You're going to have to endure me for today. Ashana will be back. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm not here too long. But I really do want to talk about this because I'm so excited about this team.
Maybe we'll bring you on for the Olympic ones too. You know, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity.
Okay.
This is your opportunity to see if you're going to make the squad. Yeah, but speaking of making the squad,
I'll be Lynn Williams, a late addition to the squad.
Yeah. Speaking of someone not making the squad, I just realized I spelled Olympic wrong, but I'm going to leave it like that because
wow.
Yeah, this is speaking of some pre-Olympic struggles. I had some. The U.S. women's national team definitely had some. So let's talk about that. So it was two matches. The send-off series to the Olympics. We had match number 1 against Mexico and match number 2 against Costa Rica, who the U.S. women have never not beaten,
right,
until today. So what was your take on these matches? I think the same theme that has plagued this team a little bit is the lack of scoring ability. And I don't mean score ability in terms of creating chances, but the lack of putting the ball into the back of the net.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to remember. This is a small roster. The Olympics are very, very close. I think goal number 1 is don't get injured. So keep that in mind, I think. And that's something important to consider. I think this team created enough. They clearly were told, and Emma Hayes clearly directed them to value possession. It was very important for this team. It seems like a new way of playing. It seems like as much as you can value the ball. If this were a competitive game, if this were an Olympic game in which they need to get a result, the last 20 minutes would have looked very different. They would have been pushing in different ways, but it's felt almost like a training exercise against Costa Rica, where it's very much, let's possess the ball. Let's see how we can create from situations and be patient. It didn't really work out. We still missed a ton of chances, but it looked like rust to me. It looked a little bit of rust, a little bit of the final ball not being there. Similar story against Mexico, started slow and then getting the goal later on in the second half. And I think the difference against Costa Rica is the goal just didn't come. But the difference was the Costa Rican goalkeeper was incredible. I mean, 12 saves. What a performance.
Good job by Bermudez. But I thought everyone missed chances. Mal Swanson missed chances. Lindsay Horan had a sitter at the end to win the match off a header.
Yeah, she did.
Lynn Williams chance. Everyone had chances.
They all had chances. And it's the final pass seemed a little off. The final touch was a little off. The decision-making in the box was just not always the right choice. But Lindsay Horan in particular, I think she's such an important player. She's obviously captaining the team. She looked a little bit still like a player who hasn't played in some time, right? She's based in Europe, so she is off season now, right? So she looks like a little bit step slower. And she'll get into form as the Olympics, over the course of the next week and in that first game against Zambia. So I think they'll be fine. I'm not concerned. I really felt that some of the movement and some of the passing was as slick as I've ever seen this team. Yes, there was not the dynamism. There was not the speed of attack in some ways. And of course, when a team's sitting in a low block the way Costa Rica was, you don't have those moments to counter. And that's something to consider tactically as well, because teams may play the U.S. like that, considering that they've struggled to break down teams in a low block. But I'm not concerned. It really felt like a training exercise. It felt that this team was instructed to possess, and that was the priority. And some of the moves were really some lovely one-touch play. It just didn't have the final ball.
Yeah, I think Trinity Rodman specifically had some nice moves. I thought she played actually well. Beating players. She was the one player I thought was showing initiative to beat players. And she actually had some nice runs. The end pass, like you said, wasn't there, but she had some nice runs. Overall, I thought the midfield played well. I thought Corbin Albert I always like Corbin Albert as a player. I think she's, one of the best players we have on this team, and I thought she filled in very well. Of course, Rose Lavelle didn't play in this match, and I think I think there's some thing to be said. Perhaps Corbin Albert actually starts, but overall, I think, like you said, I think there was a lot of rust from this team, but it is a little bit interesting because some teams may decide to play a low block. And then the question is, okay, what is the U.S. women's national team going to do to get past that in terms of actually putting the ball in the back of the net?
Right. So I think bringing on Jaden Shaw late was interesting, right? Because she's a player. While I do believe Corbin Albert had a good game, I thought the game changed slightly. You talked about Trinity Rodman taking players on and driving things forward. I thought Jaden Shaw changed things a little bit as well because she's such a tricky player when she came on. It'll be really interesting. The other thing I liked when they brought on Jaden Shaw was it seemed to me that then what happened was Lindsay Horan dropped back a little bit into that midfield role because before they were playing Coffey and Albert there sitting in the midfield there with two, and then you had three across the front, Mal Swanson sitting up top, but you had Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman, and Horan. I thought she struggled to get on the ball in places where she's as dangerous, Lindsay Horan. I like her a little dropped because then she can get on the ball and distribute, which is what she's really good at. I think what happened was when they brought on Jaden Shaw, that pushed Lindsay Horan back a little bit, and she was able to get on the ball in better spaces and then also make those late runs into the box. So I'm intrigued as to how they're going to play because I think Jaden Shaw is an X factor, and it seems like Emma Hayes' plan is to bring her on as a super sub, which is, I think, an interesting way to go and certainly a good option. But she may push for a starting spot as well. It's so interesting because you have Rose Lavelle, you have Corbin Albert in there, and you have Jaden Shaw, three players who can do different types of damage in that midfield role. So it's interesting. She's got a lot of pieces to play with, and maybe she hasn't quite figured out her lineup yet, it seems.
Yeah, I think the other thing is the U.S. Is going to have to do a lot of shooting practice, I mean this. I mean this seriously because sometimes you don't get those penetrative in the box finishes, right? We've just seen two major tournaments just happen right now on the men's side, and a lot of the goals that are scored, this day and age of the game are shots from either outside the box that are just some golazos, as we like to say, and frankly the U.S. women are gonna have to shoot better in terms of from range.
Yeah, and they didn't take that many shots against Costa Rica, didn't you? I mean, there were 12 shots saved, but didn't you feel that there was almost a directive? Let's try and pass our way through. Almost as they were told before the game, the purpose of today is to try and break them down by passing the ball. Because it felt like they were reluctant to shoot. And the sense I got was this was coming from the top. This was Emma Hayes using this game as an exercise in possession. That's the way I felt. So that's why I'm not so concerned about the lack of goals because it felt nearly intentional.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this was definitely an Emma Hayes initiative or directive. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the best for all the matches, though. And there are going to be times when, you kind of saw it toward the end of the match where they were just floating long balls into the box. You're going to have to do that, right? This possession-based game plan in terms of what they were trying to execute today obviously didn't work, right? Like if this was a knockout match, you'd be heading into extra time and going into penalties, and we don't want to do that again. As the U.S. women don't want to do that again. You want to win these before. The other thing is that's very important is now we're upon the Olympics are upon us. First match against Zambia, but then you have two very hard matches right off the bat to make it through to the next round.
Exactly. It's a great point because there's no ramp up period at all. This starts off with a game that is an inferior point. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And so the Olympics really will start in that second game for this team. And it's big, right? You get the Germans in the second game. It's not easy. So you have to go from 0 to 60 very, very fast, right? And that's going to be a challenge for this team because they haven't had a game of that magnitude and that intensity in a while. And this team under Emma Hayes certainly hasn't had it. So it'll be really interesting how quickly they adapt to that situation because you're going to travel, you're going to get there, you get the first game to kind of ease into things. I'm not saying it's not a game. It's just a game that they should comfortably win. And then it gets difficult because the last two games are both incredibly tough games. It's not an easy group at all.
It's not an easy group. And the other thing we want to not replicate is what happened in the World Cup, because the first match against Vietnam, everyone is saying, okay, how many are they going to score? They're going to score 10 or whatever. They only ended up getting 3 goals. And so at the end of that match, that ended up hurting them in terms of the goal difference. And then they got, second in the group and all kinds of things happen after that. So even in the Zambia game, You want to come out strong. You want to put multiple goals in there. You want players to get their shooting touch going at the beginning of the tournament.
Yeah. No, there's two ways to look at this, right? You could say that they're saving the goals for when it really counts, that there's this pent up, that'll come hopefully and come in big bunches. Or you might say, well, is this the beginnings of some struggles that we're going to have? My sense is the players that are on that field, my sense is that this is just some fine-tuning the direction, fine-tuning some of the final pass, and I think they'll be fine. And the Zambia game will be a good test to tell early on, are they in the mood to score goals? And I think they will. This team, attacking-wise, there's so many options, and they're so dynamic. And the one thing, as you point out in the beginning, the one thing that's been missing maybe at times is not always being clinical. So that is the next step for this team. And they weren't clinical in these warm-up games. But I'm still encouraged. They're creating enough chances. And you'd like to think that these players, particularly a player like Mal Swanson, who was not there for the World Cup, who hasn't had that big international moment, right? She hasn't had that stage. So she's itching to put her mark on a massive tournament like this. I think she's going to come out with some goals. I think she's going to do it early and often.
Yeah, no, I think the opportunity is all there. And now the next time we'll see the U.S. women's national team will be in France for the Olympics. Get excited for all your U.S. soccer fans out there. I know the men let us down this summer, but the women, now it's time to switch gears. So we will continue our coverage of the U.S. women's national team once they reach the Olympics. That's the next time we'll be coming to you with a video. If you've been enjoying the videos,
the redemption tour. And the team, the team is so set up. I'm very excited, and I'm really optimistic. I think it's going to be a fantastic tournament for this team. I really do.
Yeah, so for those of you out there who are enjoying watching these videos or who are anticipating the videos that will be coming out for the Olympics, please subscribe to the channel. And Rahi, I'll let you say it today.
Go USA!